Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Simon Marks, and these are the top stories of the hour. NATO says it is strengthening its defences amid Russia's military build-up on the Ukrainian border. NATO forces are on standby, and President Biden is considering the deployment of an additional 5,000 US troops to Eastern Europe. Yemen's Houthi rebels threatened to ramp up their attacks on the UAE after 2 ballistic missiles were shot down over Abu Dhabi today, their second assault in a week. In a big relief for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, the High Court in London allows him to appeal a previous top court's verdict that approved his extradition to the United States. Taliban talks with the West begin in Oslo, focusing on the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. The Taliban delegation is led by the country's foreign minister. It met with representatives of the US, the UK, the EU, France, Italy and Germany. And more than 200 drivers and travellers who became stranded on a highway after being stuck in a blizzard in southeastern Turkey are rescued after a 12-hour ordeal. Tensions are simmering on Russia's borders with Ukraine. Fears of a Russian invasion are growing. The military build-up at the border shows no sign of dissipating. And crisis talks are still at an impasse. The Kremlin says NATO is ramping up tensions after announcing that its members are putting additional forces on standby and sending ships and fighter jets to bolster Europe's eastern defences. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg issued a statement saying NATO allies continue to take all necessary measures to protect and defend all allies, including by reinforcing the eastern part of the alliance. We will always respond, he says, to any deterioration of our security environment. The US-led military alliance says it's beefing up its deterrence presence in the Baltics. Denmark is sending a frigate and deploying F-18 warplanes to Lithuania. Spain will also send warships and could send fighter jets to Bulgaria. France says it's ready to send troops to Bulgaria if needed, and Joe Biden is contemplating an American troop build-up as well. Over the weekend, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, the NATO countries closest to Russia, confirmed they are planning to send US-made anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles to Ukraine. Amid tensions, the Latvian foreign minister tweeted that we are reaching the point where the continuous Russian and Belarusian military build-up in Europe needs to be addressed by appropriate NATO countermeasures. It is time to increase Allied forces' presence in the alliance's eastern flank, both as measures of defence and deterrence. Meanwhile, Ireland has said that a new series of Russian war games off its coast are not welcome.
This isn't a time to increase military activity and tension in the context of what's happening with and in Ukraine at the moment. And so I think it's important that I would brief my colleagues on those intentions. Russia, under international law of the sea, can of course undertake military exercises in international water. But the fact that they're choosing to do it on the western borders, if you like, of the EU, off the Irish coast, is something that, in our view, is simply not welcome and not wanted right now, particularly in the coming weeks.
And the Irish Foreign Minister made those comments at a European Union meeting on the Ukraine crisis. Present at the talks, The EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, who said that a united European bloc stands behind Ukraine and that member countries, along with the US, are discussing possible sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine, while the Danish foreign minister warned of unprecedented sanctions if and when Russia invades.
Today we will have Blinken at our meeting, Secretary Blinken, to coordinate further steps. There's no doubt we are ready to react forcefully with comprehensive sanctions, never seen before, seen a number of sanctions, if Russia will continue and invade Ukraine again. And it's also very important to say that at the same time we are ready to discuss with our diplomatic track in a coordinated fashion with Russia.
Meanwhile, the United States has ordered family members of its embassy staff in Ukraine to leave the country. Washington has authorized the voluntary departure of its non-essential embassy employees. Other US nationals in eastern Ukraine have also been advised to leave. The Biden administration warning them that no evacuation will be possible if the Russians go ahead and invade. The US has also advised its citizens against traveling to Ukraine.
The United States on Sunday said it was ordering the departure of eligible family members of staff from its embassy in Ukraine, and that all U.S. citizens should consider leaving due to the threat of military action from Russia. U.S. and Russian diplomats made no major breakthrough at talks last week, and Moscow has been massing troops on the border with Ukraine. The State Department said it was authorizing the, quote, voluntary departure of U.S. direct hire employees and ordered the departure of eligible family members from Embassy Kyiv due to the continued threat of Russian military action. It added that, quote, U.S. citizens in Ukraine should consider departing now using commercial or other privately available transportation options.
So let's cross live to our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who is joining us live from New York. And Susan, this decision by the US to begin drawing down embassy staff in Kyiv and warning American nationals in Ukraine basically to get out of the country, that is the latest indication that the Biden administration clearly now expects some kind of Russian military operation.
And taking precautions really after what happened with the debacle in Afghanistan, although many and no one expects it to be as chaotic, and no one is drawing any parallels, but perhaps, talking about evacuation and being faulty. But I do want to mention that there is already a quote-unquote level 4 travel advisory against Ukraine, and now the State Department says that we are imposing a level 4 travel advisory. And what that was regarding Ukraine was, first of all, for the coronavirus pandemic, and then second of all, a secondary travel advisory came on that, and that was for a possible Russian invasion, and that was on the State Department website as early as Friday. Now the State Department is admitting that. President Biden did say that he expected Russian President Vladimir Putin to sort of stage some sort of an offensive, and that he, quote unquote, had to at this point during that press conference that he had last week. So that's what the Americans apparently think. Russia continues to deny that it's planning on staging an invasion. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and Susan, let's talk a bit about the tone of the conversation that's underway. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Friday, after his meeting with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, that the United States is engaged in hysteria over Ukraine, and yet Russia is the country with 100,000 troops nestled along Ukraine's border. The Americans, of course, say that the path to diffusing all of this diplomatically is still open, but there's a big distinction in what we're hearing from Washington, D.C. and Russia about efforts to find common cause and de-escalate this crisis.
this was a self-made, according to the United States and its allies, and again, it's depending who you ask at the end of the day, but I think the international community was clear in seeing that this was a self-inflicted and self-made crisis on the part of Russia. Russia staged this crisis on the border of Ukraine, asked for a meeting with President Biden, and then sort of the crisis escalated from there, and these troops started to amass on the border of Ukraine. Some say perhaps after the faulty withdrawal of Afghanistan by the Biden administration, Russia saw sort of an opportunity there that causes, there's a lot to talk about on why Russia decided to stage this incursion during this time, but the United States has continued to call for a diplomatic solution, and then there's that sort of argument on whether or not, again, Russia plans on going for a full-on invasion, or it wants to roll some of its troops into Ukraine on the one hand and get some kind of concession from the United States on the other. But to call the United States hysteric at this point, I don't think would bode well in not only among those who Russia tries to get on its side, or on those on the international community who sort of saw this self-made crisis on the part of Russia develop at this point.
And of course, Joe Biden spent much of his early weeks in office insisting he didn't want to be distracted by the Russians. Vladimir Putin has certainly got his attention now. Susan Tehrani, live for us in New York again today. Thanks very much for being there. The United Kingdom has followed America's announcements on Ukraine, saying that it is withdrawing some staff and their relatives from the British embassy in Ukraine in response to the growing threat from Russia. It says the embassy will remain open for essential work, and the UK has further accused Russia of trying to control Ukraine. Here's how.
Britain has accused the Kremlin of seeking to install a pro-Russian leader in Ukraine. The UK's foreign ministry declined to provide evidence to back up its claims, which come at a time of heightened tensions between Russia and the West. Russia has massed troops at its border with Ukraine, but insists it has no plans to invade. In a statement, Britain's Foreign Office said it had information that the Russian government was eyeing former Ukrainian lawmaker Yevhen Muriev to potentially head a pro-Russian leadership. Muriev, who opposes Ukraine's integration with the West, described the British Foreign Office as seeming confused. He told the Observer newspaper that the statement isn't very logical, adding that he is banned from Russia. The Russian Foreign Ministry dismissed the comments as disinformation and accused Britain and NATO of escalating tensions. The UK also said it had information that Russian intelligence services were maintaining links with numerous former Ukrainian politicians, including senior figures linked to ex-President Viktor Yanukovych, who fled to Russia in 2014 after 3 months of protests. The British claims come a day after top US and Russian diplomats failed to make a breakthrough in discussions to resolve the crisis. They have agreed to keep talking. Russia has made demands on the US, including a halt to NATO's eastward expansion and a pledge that Ukraine will never be allowed to join the Western military alliance. A UK Foreign Ministry source said it was not usual practice to share intelligence matters, and that the details had only been declassified after careful consideration in order to deter Russian aggression. The office of UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson also said he was planning to ramp up pressure on Russia this week by calling for European counterparts to come together with the United States.
Now, apart from the COVID-19 pandemic, America is dealing with something of an endemic of its own. We're talking, of course, about gun violence. Thousands fall prey to it year after year, and yet no solution seems to be in sight for this persistent social problem. President Biden assumed office a year ago, promising to take action on guns. He vowed to ban assault weapons and take on the powerful companies running the gun industry. But exactly 1 year later, mass shootings have become a weekly affair. Gun sales remain at a record. 2021 was the deadliest year yet for mass shooting incidents in the United States. The Gun Violence Archive, which monitors the numbers, has published its latest report. And these are the numbers from Joe Biden's first year in office. In comparison to Donald Trump's first year in the Oval Office, and the result is startling, fatal shootings are up by over 5,000. Mass shooting incidents have doubled since 2017. Over 300 more children were affected by gun violence last year than in 2017. Suicide rates using firearms have also increased by over 2,000 people. As of January the 21st, in just 3 weeks, there were more than 2,600 people shot dead in the United States so far this year. And there have been a total number of 26 mass shootings and 1 incident of mass murder. Based on the trend, America could potentially see over 19,000 killings and 450 mass shootings by the end of this year. In response to these revelations, a school gun control group called March for Our Lives is calling on the president to put an end to the bloodshed. The group was founded by the survivors of a mass shooting at a high school in Florida 3 years ago. Activists from the student-led group said that they were horrified by the escalating epidemic of violence that has continued under the Biden administration. A massive unseasonal fire ravaging parts of California's Monterey County has prompted the evacuation of thousands of residents on America's Pacific coast. Strong winds have pushed the wildfire that broke out in the rugged mountains along Big Sur. The massive fire has scorched about 1,500 acres so far. It broke out on Friday in a canyon and quickly spread towards the sea due to high-intensity winds. A 20-mile stretch of State Highway number 1 was also closed to divert traffic from the region. Over 250 firefighters have been deployed to assist in the fire operations. Nearly a quarter of the blaze has been contained so far. Authorities have issued evacuation orders for about 500 residents from the region so far. Strong winds were recorded across the San Francisco Bay Area, knocking down power lines and causing power outages to at least 18,000 customers. Erratic climate changes have worsened the forest fire woes in California in recent months. Last year, the wildfire season started unusually early amid ongoing drought and low reservoir levels. In January of last year alone, the state battled nearly 300 fires across the region. Historic sites in Iraq are in danger of collapse due to erosion and neglect. There are warnings that the ruins of the ancient town of Balad could disappear unless conservation work is undertaken by the authorities there.
The distinctive Romanesque arch of this historic bridge was once a link between the cities of Balad and Nisibin. Today it is in danger of collapse after years of neglect. This is the story of historical sites in Iraq. They are threatened by neglect and erosion. The Abbasid Bridge is also known as the Roman Bridge. It was built by Muhammad al-Jazri during the Abbasid Caliphate around 1215 AD. The structure is 22 meters long, 5 meters wide and 12 meters in height. It used to be composed of 3 archways on the right and the other on the left. Now there is nothing left except this one. It was once an important link on the Abbasid caravan road, one that connected Mosul to the neighboring cities in Turkey and Syria.
It's a historical landmark, and it used to be a bridge that connected the city of Balad to Nisbin, where caravans and armies used to pass earlier.
Now the bridge is used by sheep herders to cross a river. It is located near the village of Old Mosul, some 40 kilometers northwest from the city itself. The area was once the ancient town of Balad city, which was ruined in the 14th century. The ruins can be seen all around the area. There have been some excavation efforts since 1996, but they stopped due to instability in the country. The ruins include a school, a mosque and market areas in the old city. Their designs were the cutting edge of architecture style for that time. Locals now want the authorities to conserve the bridge and the ruins.
We demand the government, the relevant parties and the Ministry of Antiquities take care of this city, because this city is a fortune, a treasure and a civilized thing. It is the civilization of the whole country.
Long known as the cradle of civilization, Iraq is home to more than 10,000 cultural heritage sites. The now war-torn nation once enjoyed a golden age of architectural and political achievements. These ruins have survived for hundreds of years, but erosion might destroy them if they are not protected soon. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Finally today, we're going to take you off to Albania, where traditional pottery was once a popular craft and a thriving business. Since the fall of the communist regime, there are only a few artisans left who are well versed in the craft. However, in recent years, Albania has been witnessing a renewed appreciation for traditional pottery.
This craft should not be lost because there is an increase in demand. Requests for bowls have increased.
Of course, they are of great value because besides supporting the tradition, especially in Fakir, where there are 4 pottery places, a tradition inherited from generation to generation, they also operate as businesses.
And that's the Monday edition of WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Simon Marks. I'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place, for the Tuesday edition. Stay with WION for all the latest news updates relating to Ukraine and everything else that's taking place around the world. We'll see you again soon.
This is Arab.